Ladies and gentlemen, a man that needs no introduction, but I will give myself one anyway, because without an introduction, I have no self-esteem. Live from his own mother's basement, it's, it's, it's me. It's John. Here's Johnny. Hooray. So, as we all know, it's been now 3 years. 3 fucking years. It seems like just yesterday to a guy like me that we got the news that the Macho Man, Randy Savage, had passed away. And I've been trying not to tear up all day thinking about this. It's not like it's a big surprise that the anniversary of his death is going to come around, once he's gone. And I've had, it's been 3 years to let it kind of sink in, but it just doesn't feel real. And I guess that you can kind of relate it to the feeling that you might have heard when the Ultimate Warrior just passed away here, how unbelievable that was out of the fucking blue, right? Like after the Hall of Fame. And so it's been going through my mind about the best way to try to reconcile, where my own emotions are at. And I think that it's just proper that, I bring this up. My great aunt is about to be buried this coming Saturday. It'll be, what the hell's today? Let me do some math. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, so by the 24th, she will be put into the ground. Finally, they'll be able to do the burial. All the permafrost that we had here from the really bad winter is finally thawed through. She passed away back in February. That was hard. That was really hard. She was one of two family members I had, extended family, that passed away. And I come from a small town where everybody knows everybody, and I would like to take a moment to liken that to the same kind of small family where everybody knows everybody within the wrestling business itself. I know that I'm not the only one that gets fucking teary-eyed about when we lose wrestlers, because wrestling has been such a vital, important part of my life, of my day-to-day, my identity. And as I get older, it just becomes even more so a part of who I am. And I know that I've been embittered. I know that I've been outspoken and clearly frustrated with the avenues that professional wrestling has pursued in recent years. Not, satisfied to, the depths or in the same ways that I was when I was younger. And some of that is just, being younger and not being as critical. But I think a lot of it too is just the overall attitude, the times, if you will. It's not that I even consider myself a front runner, so to speak, because my entire life I've been a wrestling fan. It's not like I jumped onto some kind of bandwagon for popularity. And I've seen it through rough times. These have been pretty rough times. The period there in the early 90s was a little bit weird to the mid 90s, before we got really the explosion of the NWO, and before we got like the DX and the Attitude Era and all that, the Rock and Stone Cold and everybody, Goldberg, Sting, just that was some cool shit in wrestling. And a lot of those guys were players, and I know that just on this particular day, around this particular time of year, I look back and I remember that the Macho Man to me was one of the most integral, one of the best players. And I've gone in past videos and past memoirs and whatever, and I've typed up, grandiose length statements and little blogs, mainly in the groups that I'm in on Facebook, If you don't know about the Wrestling Council, you should join it. Um, it's run by a really good group of guys. We don't allow any kind of dumb hatred, flame wars, any of that childish stuff. We just talk about the same passion that we all have. We're from all over the place. There are workers within the business that are in the group. There's a lot of posts. There's a lot of things to keep yourself in on. It's way more than just talking about WWE. I mean, that's the main thing out there. It's going to get a lot of the attention, but there are just so many good folks in that group that just love professional wrestling and understand, what it is so that they can appreciate it for that rather than just bitch about, the product in terms of comparing it to the past. But let's tie this all together with where I think I was going before. The fact that the 80s, that boom period, that golden era, and then again in the more attitude kind of era, like there were definitely guys that stood out, and there were guys that fucking held the wrestling business together in between those two, eras respectively. And there's guys that will go on to be remembered as just fucking absolute legends and larger than life. And if anybody was a fan of, the Ultimate Warrior and Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan even, during these years that we dubbed, the golden era, the Hogan era of, the WWF at the time, you really have to give credence where, you have to bow your head in respect to, and I know that you guys, anybody that's listening to this, was a true fan also of the Macho Man Randy Savage and the work that he put in and the attitude that he had, to where you didn't have to necessarily be the main event of the night to be the match or to wrestle as though that match was the main event. And while Savage was probably not as big of a draw as the Andre the Giant and the Hogan that I mentioned, I would say that, and I'm not even doing this out of fanboy kind of status or because it's, I mean, this is a legitimate statement coming from a fan of wrestling and itself, not just a fan of Randy Savage. And you can ask a lot of people just in modern life, what do you remember about Randy Savage? And if you bring up the Slim Jim commercials, they will tell you that he had such notoriety and such, that gruff voice and snap into a Slim Jim, brother. They remember that high intensity. My partner, she talks about being scared of that as a kid. She didn't understand it. She's a little younger than me, and growing up, that his voice and the colors and everything, beef and spice, it used to frighten her, and it's kind of silly to me because he was just such a good guy. But Randy Savage, let me make this statement before I lose my fucking train of thought here 9 minutes in. I've already done that about 6 times. It's fine. It's going to happen. Randy Savage is one of the best dance partners in the ring that you could have. He was enhancement talent without being cast amongst the ranks of the really lower card enhancement talent. And don't take this as in any way that I'm saying that Randy Savage was a jobber, because he definitely wasn't. He was billed at the main event, as the main event, as a fantastic fucking worker. He was a top fucking guy for, a good while. But for anybody to be able to get into a program with Randy Savage, to be able to have a series of matches, I think about Diamond Dallas Page in particular, but I know there were a lot more people that had him as a dance partner He made Hogan look as good as Hogan could look. He made Warrior look fucking phenomenal in the career-ending match at WrestleMania 7. Savage put guys over. He didn't have a problem doing it. He was not... He was selfless as a point of understanding the business, to know that in putting the other guy over, that he made himself look even that much better. And that he was kind of Teflon. He could lose 6 months in a row and people would still love him and people would still gravitate toward the personality. He was not a jobber, but for him to do a job for you meant that you had really made it. I guess that's what I was trying to say. And I look now to see like what the benchmark is in wrestling, and I don't think that we have that equal comparison. You know, the only thing that I can consider that would be anywhere near the statement I'm trying to make about the importance of what Savage meant to wrestling is that for years The Undertaker has had his WrestleMania, you know, it was about the streak. It was about being in the ring with The Undertaker. And if you could get a match with Taker, you were considered pretty hot shit. And that's really the only comparison that I can come up with for anything to do with nowadays product. It's just to have been put in a program with Savage meant that you were going to be put on the map, meant that they had faith in you, meant that you just weren't getting some kind of rocket ship push, but that they had, you know, a vision and a plan of adding you to the main event. Savage feuded with really top-notch people, but he also helped to bring out the best in them and to give them somebody that they could really work through a match with, and somebody that helped them perfect their own craft and to be able to get over. I think of guys that I like that never held a world title, even like Scott Hall, and when Razor Ramon was injected into a kind of a standoff with Randy Savage, and just the promos that they had together, and just the fact that you're being featured alongside somebody that was that fucking good, you know, that meant a lot for Razor's career especially, but just the number of people that he both influenced to probably get into wrestling, and the influence that he had because of being in wrestling like he was, to even to hand choose a partner or to want to work with somebody, that meant a lot. That was a lot of, you know, backstage and helping keep the family together kind of thing. I mean, because you had the politicians like the Hogans and the fucking Shawn Michaels and the... who else back then was a real dick? Probably even the Bret Harts of the world that only wanted to work with certain guys. And they won't... I don't think that Savage was like that. I think that Savage was willing to... Now, he didn't want to be made to look a fucking fool or anything, and he wouldn't have done any kind of, you know, Doink the Clown kind of gimmick or anything, but Macho Man went out there and he in the Royal Rumble, he put over Yokozuna. You know, like I said, he put over Ultimate Warrior, even though Ultimate Warrior was nowhere near him on a fucking technical basis. When Savage and Steamboat wrestled for that Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 3, it is one of the best fucking matches you will ever watch in your life. And whether you're a new school fan, whether you're a real old school fan, whether you got caught somewhere in the middle, you can look at that match and enjoy it. And the match, it makes sense when you watch it. And that match put over Ricky Steamboat. It, you know, not that he needed putting over, but it really... that feud gave him so much sympathy, and he was so fucking over. You couldn't touch in terms of how people had concern for that storyline where his larynx had been crushed, and just it was mega hot. It was mega over. Savage was still involved when Vince McMahon was getting these ideas to put Hogan in those fucking movies, especially like the No Holds Barred, and they brought in that Zeus character. Macho Man was the one to really kind of be there as that cornerstone piece that you would need to bring Zeus any kind of legitimacy, because if Macho Man went out and found this guy that was really badass, you had to believe it because the Macho Man himself was really badass. And I just think it goes, I mean, it without saying, but I want to be the one to say it, that it just doesn't feel like he's gone. And I can't really accept that. And maybe that's a part of me, you know, my inner child that never wants to grow up and never wants to admit it, but I know that what I took away from my childhood was that Randy Savage was my fucking hero. And that's not going to change. I'll be, if I live to be 120 years old, I will still go down and I will still say that one of my heroes in life was the Macho Man. And I will still be quoting, the Slim Jim commercials, and I will still be talking about top rope axe handles and elbow drops and all sorts of shit, because Randy Savage is somebody that made me a wrestling fan for life. His ability to capture me and draw me in, his ability to work with fucking like anybody, his kindness, his generosity. I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but he was very, very active with the children's hospital down there where he lived. He lived in Sarasota, and I don't know where the hospital was per se, whether it was in Sarasota or whether it was a few towns over or whatever. But those kids that had the terminal cancer and all those things, he did so much work for that place. He would always go there and visit, and people that didn't even necessarily watch wrestling still knew who he was, and he did it because of the fact that he had a good life through wrestling and he wanted to give back. And I know that a lot of people, they might not know that about him, or they might think that it was to cover up for something, or they might think that he did it because he wanted to be talked about better than Hogan or whatever it was. And I know that a lot of people say that Savage was a little bit paranoid, and I mean, to a degree, yeah. But I think that the good far outweighs the bad. And just the tragic way that his life was ended, that he would be driving a car down the road with his practically new fucking bride. I mean, they hadn't even been married a year. And just to have that heart episode and to go and to have her direct the car off the road, and I believe they hit a tree, and he was just gone like that. Like, I find that really hard to accept, and I know I'm kind of rambly because I'm getting teary right now, and I'm a 30-year-old man in his mother's basement that's getting teary over a wrestler that died 3 years ago, so bear with me. It's just that he had such a huge fucking impact, not only on me. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be like Randy Savage only had an impact on me. That wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to anybody else that made videos. It wouldn't be fair to anybody that watched wrestling. I want to share in that with people, that energy, that passion for life, his drive to want to be better, to really make something that stood out, to be proud of his work. He trained so fucking hard, and he always wanted to be fucking perfect and be spot on. Lazy was not a word that was in his vocabulary. And I know that people say that Warrior trained hard, and I know that people say that he had his own business philosophy and tried to bring out the best in others, and I think that Savage is on par with that. And I think that Savage's own personal life, although it may have been a little hectic for a little bit, he really wanted to be proud of what he did, and he wanted to give back to people. And I know that he had that really silly rap album that my buddy Dan got me as kind of a gag gift, but he had a lot of people that he had made friends with in the business, and one of them was, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, who was also taken from us way too young, way too early. And it's just those lasting moments that you kind of carry with you throughout life when you see a match, or you remember things, or you just growing up on old VHS tapes and always seeing him, and even watching during the Monday Night Wars and knowing that when Macho Man left the WWF at that time and went to WCW, just knowing that big things were going to come, he was not ready to have hung up his career and have gone into announcing. And he won the Comeback of the Year award, and I believe it was Pro Wrestling Illustrated back then. I think that's the right magazine. It was one of them. For Comeback of the Year in 1995, he, held 2 titles in WCW, and it's funny that even in WWF, in the 2 biggest organizations, the only 2 people that he ever dropped the title to were Hogan and Flair. Arguably, the 2 biggest fucking names in wrestling for their respective organizations and over time, So he was a true player in the sense that, he was positioned well, he got in there and did the dance and made people look good, and he couldn't miss a step. Even injured, he was fucking light years ahead of not only the times, but just always on, always living that character. It was an extension of who he really was. I know that the big cowboy hat and the frilly, the colors and the things on the boots and the crap hanging off of the funny coats and all that, the big oversized glasses. Yes, it was eccentric, and it was fucking fun as hell, too. And, he was one of the first guys that could wear a color pink like that and mix it with like a yellow or some shit. Or some lime-ass green thing. And, back then, I know before everybody was really hot on the whole gay rights agenda, which I am pretty big supporter of nowadays. The terminology we used to throw around back then was, "That's so gay." Nobody told him that. Nobody thought that either. If you did, you got your fucking butt kicked because there were so many loyal Savage fans. Randy Savage, the Ultimate Warrior, and Bret Hart made it fucking cool to be able to wear pink. Alright? And that's the only reason that guys can even continue to do that today, is because they did it back then. Because that was what we were exposed to, as kids following mainstream wrestling. And it was amazing. And there's something to be said for that, But it's not just the color of your shirt or, your fucking gimmick that you have on a TV show. It's the way that you conducted yourself and how you managed to stay relevant all those years. And the fact that you were given the title multiple times, and he didn't argue or politic to the sheer extent that, a lot of these other guys did backstage. He was just respected. Very respected. I know that some people complain, some of the other guys, but when we first learned about his loss, we were all taken aback, and it was just like, you couldn't believe. I still can't believe it to this day. Some of us have let it set in. I'm not one of us that has. I'm me. I'm out there. I'm still one of the outliers. I don't know that I can ever really let it sink in, I have to protect it because it's a part of me. I don't want any part of me to really have to, go away or grow up or anything like that. And, I know that a lot of you are saying right now, "Well, John, you live in your mother's basement. You didn't fucking grow up." It's like, yeah, but growing up is a scary thing. Who wants to do that, right? So, when you're out there around this time of year every year, and even especially just this year, because it's a crime that himself and especially Miss Elizabeth are not, recognized by the WWE as Hall of Famers yet in the year 2014, when they should have been 2 of the first fucking people put in that thing. And I don't need to be the one to tell you that. You can ask lots of fans there's a reason they keep chanting Randy Savage on Raw. I haven't been watching it, but I hear that it keeps coming up. And just especially because it's around Memorial Day, and when you remember your heroes or people that paved the way, or whatever. I'm not saying that Randy Savage was a military veteran, but his father was. And again, you go back to that idea of family, and everybody knows everybody, and it's just my small town I live in. Like, there were a lot of kids that were affected by how popular pro wrestling was when we were growing up, and I know I took it in a lot more than some of them did to make it personal and whatnot, but it was the cool thing. It was really what helped give us a sense of pride and identity and people to look up to, and a feeling that you could be larger than life, that was possible, to be creative, to want to do things. Kind of a driving force, like, when I grow up, I want to be like that. I want to be that confident and that cool. I don't want to talk like that because that's really high intensity, man. You know what I'm saying, brother? Like, everybody tries to do the Macho Man voice. Some people fail miserably. I fare okay. I don't claim to have the best one. I'm definitely better than a lot of these other guys. They always sound like Mike Tyson with their squeaky voices. But it's hilarious to me to see other people remember the voice and to remember the man. And I could talk for an hour, but I think I'm going to plug it right here. Be done with it. I kind of got off on talking about so many things. I lost really where I was going, other than it's hard to have lost them, and I still remember them. I won't ever forget them, and I hope that you guys won't either. Till next time, see ya.